To the Lord, for he is good. His steadfast love endures forever. Let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story. Today we have Miss Claudia Smith, who is going to come and share with us her story about her relationship with Christ and what First Baptist Church of Theodore has meant to her. But Miss Claudia.
Good morning, family.
Good morning.
Can you hear me, everyone? Some people have had trouble hearing, so check to be sure you can be heard. All right. My name is Claudia Joy Smith Pittman, and I had a 7th grade teacher who always told me that if you had a talk, or were given a talk, you need to either start out with a funny story to get people's attention, or an interesting fact. So Miss Kitchens would be proud of me to know that I have remembered that today. I read in this book about 2 weeks ago an interesting fact that I never really thought much about, but now I know my answer. All the pastors I've ever had have talked about how Baptists claim their bench. They sit in the same place every week. It's their family bench. We still have our family benches. Everyone likes to sit in the space that they claim is their family bench. You see me sitting over there? That was my family's bench. The reason this is to be is because way back in the old days, this book tells me that you had a donation box in the front of the church, and you basically gave a donation and rented your pew for your family. Now, I have never seen that done, but that's what this book tells me, so you're never too old to learn about things. And I recommend you get the new one that's back there because it has good facts. So, taking that from the family bench, my family had a bench in the stone church. My father, which I really didn't know until my brother told me, his name is on the cornerstone of the stone church. He helped build and grow. He had been a member here since he was 18 years old when his family moved back. And this is where he was always happiest. This was his family. So, we had our family bench. And my dad sat on the end next to the window over there. And my mother would come out of the choir and sit next to him. My older brother Paul, he would sit next to Mom. And then I had my place. There was only one problem with my place. Every Sunday night, every Wednesday, right above my head was one of those big, heavy lights on a chain. A little tiny chain, so a little girl would think. I didn't really hear much about what Brother Simpson said because, well, I was worried about that light falling on me, and every time we sat on the family bench, I tried to scoot left. Paul would push me away, get away. It was embarrassing because he was old enough to have his friends. So I tried to scoot as far down as I could to get out from under it, but I was still under that light. One Sunday morning, my dad was on the bench, and he was in his place, and I came into the sanctuary, and I walked up, and I went over to my corner, and I scooted way over to the corner, and looked up, and the light was just still a little bit over me. My dad said, "Sis, what are you doing? What you doing so far down there?" I said, "I'm scared." He said, "What?" I said, "I'm scared." And he said, he came down and sat by me, and he said, "What are you scared of?" And I said, "That big old light. Daddy, if that falls on me, it's going to kill me." And Daddy said, "Sis, Daddy hung those lights with Kelly. And Kelly McIntosh was my dad's best friend. He said, I can assure you, those lights are not going to fall on you. You are safe. Every now and then when I go to the fellowship hall, I take a chair. I sit it up under that light, and I think of my father. It's still there. He was right. It was safe. Now, like I told you, he had been a member here for many, many years. Now, my mother, who some of you knew, some of you did not, she was always teaching Sunday school. But the way my mother came here and was with my father is a very strange story. They had no internet. They had no phone. They had nothing. My mother lived and was born in the family log cabin with a dirt floor. These are things you may not know about my mother. She was raised in a one-room log house with a dirt floor. It had no running water, no electricity. They had to go down to the stream and get the water to bring it up to heat on the wood stove. Like you see on TV, Little House on the Prairie, they cook it on the wood stove. That was my mother's family basic heating in the winter in Bells, Tennessee. It was also their cooking and whatever they had to do. So, to say that my mother's family was poor is an understatement. My mother's family came from a dirt floor. Now, that being said, living in Bells, Tennessee, she started going to live with her uncle, my great-uncle, and my Aunt Christine. And my great-grandmother took care of the church. My mother started going to church with my great-grandmother and my Aunt Christine when she was young. And that is where her background came from, was from her grandmother. Now, my dad lived all the way here. There was no connections. You couldn't find each other. But he worked with, we called him Uncle Butch and Aunt Green, at the ammunition depot. And he worked with Ann Armstrong, who at that time I think was Ann McIntosh. They had a daughter, and because Daddy and Kelly were good friends, they wanted my daddy to marry into their family. But Daddy just, went on. My aunt graduated from nursing school in Jackson, Tennessee. My Aunt Reen had her picked out. That my Aunt Reen was my grandfather's sister. She had my Aunt Pat picked out to marry my father. But in those days, you had no way of finding each other like we do now. So she gave them 2 tickets on the bus. And when my aunt graduated, and my mother traveled with her. My mother was still in high school, had 1 more year left when she came. And my dad and Kelly McIntosh were supposed to escort the girls around. My dad had a car, and he was, willing to do that for Aunt Green, and Uncle Butch. So when he met my mother, Ann Armstrong tells me that my dad was in love. He was walking on cloud 9. He would sing, and he's told her he had met the woman he wanted to marry. The only problem was she lived in Bells, Tennessee, and she was still in high school. But when they got ready to go home, my daddy loaded the girls up in the car and went to Bells, Tennessee to meet my grandfather and my grandmother. They were still living in the dirt cabin, cabin with the dirt floor, the spring down the hill, that kind of thing. And my dad asked my grandfather to marry my mother. And my grandfather said, I want her to graduate from high school. I want her to graduate. And if you still feel that way when she graduates, I will give my permission. So for a whole year, my dad would ride back and forth to Tennessee. He helped my grandparents and my mother and them find a nice house. It was 3 rooms, it was a nice house, and he helped them fix it up and move, and they had furniture and beds to sleep in. So by the time my mother graduated, the week after she graduated, my dad went up there and he asked to marry her. And my grandfather said, I can't think of anybody else I'd rather have in our family. So, my mother said yes, they had to go to Corinth, Mississippi to marry because she was too young in the state of Tennessee. They wouldn't let my father marry her because she was too young. So I teased my father and told him he robbed the cradle because he graduated from high school the year my mother started first grade. That's how much age difference there was. And he'd say, oh, sis, you know not. But they were very well suited and they stayed married for 52 years. Now, knowing that, I will tell you this. Here at First Baptist Church, when they brought me here, I was 5 years old. Now, that's the first time I remember coming to the Stone Church. We made lots of trips. My family moved to Riviera Drive after a family feud, I understand. Too many women in one house. So they moved to Riviera Drive after they had my brother. And then I was born and came to live at Riviera Drive. And we went to Central Baptist Church. And you remember Miss Mary Thaggart? Miss Mary Thaggart was my mother's Sunday school teacher at Central Baptist Church. So that was a connection that they had. Here was Miss Mary. But my father was never happy at any other church than here. He was always coming here. So, Bible school would come, and we'd come to Bible school even though we lived uptown. That was uptown then. It was a long way and a lot of gas. So, I started singing. We built our house right there on the corner, and I got old enough to sing in the children's choir. That's when I really got interested in music. And I met Connie Vandenbosch's husband's Gammy, Ruth Vandenbosch, because she was the person who taught music. I liked it. I really did, and I had fun saying Vandenbosch when I was really little. We would all try to say it. It was fun. But she taught me music before Easter. 1 year before Easter, she was teaching us our Easter song that we were to sing. I had never really paid much attention. I had come to church all my life. My family, my mom and dad had brought me. I had been made to behave. I knew the rules of church. But the one thing I didn't know was the true story of why we came to church. Miss Vandenbosch started teaching us the old rugged cross. And I started listening to those words. And I went, let me see now. Light on in the attic. I come to church because Jesus is God's Son, and He died for me. Well, He died for everyone, but that's how I became a listener to what was supposed to happen and what Jesus had done. After Easter, and we sang the song, I had the privilege, because that was real fun privilege, to sit with the Draper family. I don't know if any of y'all remember the Drapers, but Bessie was my friend, and one Sunday I was allowed to sit with the Draper family. I don't think I heard a single word that Brother Simpson said, because Betsy and I like to draw, and that's why it was fun. Her family let us draw if it was quiet, but my mama wouldn't let us. But anyway, the benediction came, and we stood up, and they started singing Just As I Am. And for some reason, I heard a little voice that said, go, it's time. You are mine. Do not be afraid. I went down. I came out of that pew, and I went down, and I told Brother Simpson, it's time. It's time. A few weeks later, I was baptized. And it was a wonderful thing for me because Jesus has never left me alone. I have always had Him So, that being said, you know about my mother. And I told you wasn't very sentimental. She didn't keep a lot of stuff. Every time we moved, I'd say, Mama, where's my little red chair? And she'd say, well, we didn't have space for it. You've outgrown it and it's gone. I'll give it away. And I'd say, Mama, that was my chair. And she'd say, you don't need it. Now, we didn't have much space, and as a child, you're looking back saying, that was my chair. But Mother was very not sentimental because we didn't have a lot of space. We didn't hoard stuff. You know, there just wasn't room. And many times she'd say, we're moving. And I'd say, I'm coming home. I rescued my brother's baseball uniform, his letter jacket, all his certificates, my younger brother's FFA jacket, his certificates and awards, and I toted them around for years. If I hadn't, Mama would have just gone. Now, because of her background, that's part of the reason. You don't have space. You don't have a lot of things. So, Mother passed away 8 years ago. I still miss her. But she passed away, and it was my job to go through things she and I had talked about. And although she wasn't sentimental, she had a cedar chest that Daddy built for her. And in that cedar chest were the things that meant the most, and that was the most important. There was her wedding dress, Daddy's suit, many cards and letters they had written back and forth when they lived. He lived here, she lived there. I came across 3 manila envelopes. One had my brother Paul's name on it, one had my name, and one had my brother Davey. I call him my little brother, but if you've seen him, he's like this big. But I opened my envelope. It was heavy, and I opened it up. In that envelope, my mother had saved the most important thing of all. My first Bible and my baptismal certificate. And to Daddy and her, that was the most important thing that they could ever give me. So, if you're a parent, I ask you to save your child's baptismal certificate. They may not know you have it until they're grown or until you're gone. But it's important. It's really important. I think I spent more than 5 minutes, but I tried to get it fast, Brother David. So, I thank y'all for your attention. If you have any questions about my family, please ask me. I have 2 brothers, 2 sons, grandchildren, one at LSU, Maggie. Anyway, I'll let y'all go, and y'all have a good Sunday and enjoy each other. Thank you, family.